Rain hit the leaves like hissing fire as the jungle swayed in storm and screams. The monsters had come without warning, tearing through settlements with sharp claws and glowing red eyes. No one knew where they came from. No one knew how to stop them, but they killed fast, and they killed everything. They didn't speak, didn't think, didn't feel. They only hunted, devoured, and moved on. The war started before the first alarms rang. On the planet Tyros 4, a small alien village had hidden in the cliffs, hoping to avoid the massacre. They had no warriors, only farmers and children. Among them was a mother with twin daughters, blue-skinned, silver-haired, and no more than 5 years old. She held them close as fire rained from the sky. The monsters had found them. They had nowhere to run. From the smoke came a man, not a machine, not a beast. A human. He wore scars like armor, and his weapons glowed with plasma fire. The twins stared in silence, unsure if he was just another danger, but he raised one hand and said only one word: down. Then the killing began. He fought with speed that no eye could follow. 2 swords cut through claws, blood, and scales. The monsters screamed as they died, and the man did not flinch. His face was calm but cold, like someone who had done this too. Many times the mother watched as the human fought for her children, without ever looking back. Hours passed, bodies fell, his skin bled, his voice remained silent. He did not run when they surrounded him. He moved forward, always forward. By the time the sun returned, the ground was red with monster blood. He stood in the middle, breathing hard, his chest rising with each breath behind him. The twins were still safe. The mother stepped forward, shaking. She had nothing to offer. Her world had crumbled. Her people had fallen. And yet this man had saved her daughters, not for gold, not for favor, but for something she didn't understand. She asked him why. He looked at the twins and said, "Because." They looked afraid. That was all. No speech, no demand. He turned to leave, but the twins ran to him. They hugged him, their tiny arms clinging to his torn skin. He froze. Then, slowly, he kneeled. He looked each of them in the eyes, and he smiled. Just a little. The mother knelt beside him. She touched his shoulder. She had seen her people turn away in fear. She had begged for help before and been refused, but this man had come not from her kind, not from her world. He had come as death to the monsters and as hope to her daughters. She reached for his hand. He let her hold it. She didn't let go. She whispered, "Please stay." He nodded once. It was the start of something new. The villagers who had survived gathered behind them. No one said a word. They all stared at the man covered in monster blood, standing between them and extinction. That day, the people buried their dead. They lit fires in honor of the lost. They cooked what food remained, and they offered it to the human first. He sat beside the twins, now laughing. He did not speak much, but his presence made the others feel calm. They began to believe they could survive, in silence. The mother watched him. She saw the way her daughters clung to him. She saw the way he placed a hand on their heads with care, and she knew whatever came next. This man was not just a warrior, he was their guardian now. The jungle remained quiet the next day. As if afraid to disturb the warrior resting under the cliff, the human sat with his back against a rock, sharpening one of his glowing blades with slow, focused strokes. The twins played near him, chasing each other barefoot through the wet grass. He watched them with tired eyes, but a soft smile. The mother came forward carrying a bowl of warm root broth. She held it out with both hands, unsure if he would accept. He looked at her, then the food, and took it gently. He did not thank her with words, but the way he nodded was enough for her to feel it. He ate in silence as the village worked to clean up the wreckage. Burned wood, cracked stones, claw marks deep in the walls. Many homes had been torn down completely, but the people did not cry. They looked at the human, saw his strength, and felt like they could still rebuild. The children whispered stories of him already. They called him the Blade Ghost. By evening, scouts returned from the hills with news. Another wave of monsters was approaching. This time larger, stronger, faster. The village froze in fear. They had no weapons left, They had no energy to run. They looked to the human, hoping he would not leave. Then now, he stood up slowly. He cleaned the blades with a cloth, then strapped them back across his back, without speaking. He walked toward the edge of the village and stared into the dark forest. The wind carried the scent of blood and rot. The coke toward the edge of the village and stared into the dark forest. The wind carried the scent of blood and rot. Monsters were close, too close. He whispered something under his breath and turned around. He asked for a map. They brought one. He studied it with the mother beside him. Her fingers trembling, she showed him the path they came from and where the ground might favor a trap. He nodded, marked the soil with a blade tip, and made a plan. He would not let the village fall tonight. He taught the young and strong how to set traps using rocks, vines, and sharp sticks. He dug narrow pits and covered them with leaves. He placed sharp spears in the ground. The villagers followed every move he made. They had seen what he could do. Now they would help him fight. The twins tried to stay by his side, but the mother pulled them back gently. She did not want to lose them now. She knew he was not a god. He could bleed, he could die, and if he did, they would be lost still. She let him go to war once more. The monsters came after dusk. Their red eyes lit the trees like burning stars. Their growls shook the ground. The first wave stepped into the traps. Screams filled the air. The human did not wait. He moved like lightning through the chaos, slicing, spinning, striking without hesitation. His body burned with pain, but he did not stop. The second wave was smarter. They climbed over the traps. They came from above, dropping from trees like shadows. But the villagers fought beside the human. They stabbed with sticks. They threw stones. They screamed with rage. They no longer wanted to be prey. Blood stained the earth again. The bodies of the monsters piled high. The human took hit after hit. Claws tore his skin, teeth sank into his arms, but his swords danced until the last beast fell. Silence returned, and with it, breathless victory. The mother ran through the field. Calling his name, she found him on one knee, covered in cuts. Barely holding on to consciousness, she dropped beside him. Shaking, the twins ran behind her. Tears streaming down their cheeks, they hugged his legs, begging him to wake up. He opened one eye and gave them a weak smile. He fell forward. She caught him, her hands pressed to his chest. She whispered over and over, "Stay with us." The villagers surrounded them, standing over the man who had saved them twice. This time, they carried him to shelter, and they lit fires not just for the dead, but for the man who refused to die for them. The human woke in a quiet room, filled with the smell of herbs and smoke. His body ached, every muscle burning with memory. Soft light filtered in through the cracks in the stone wall. The twins were curled up beside him on a blanket, fast asleep, their faces peaceful for the first time in days. He shifted slowly, trying not to wake them. Bandages wrapped his arms and chest. Soaked with salve, a bowl of water sat near his hand with a clean cloth folded beside it. He reached for it, but his hand trembled too much to hold it steady before he could try again. The mother entered the room. She rushed to his side and gently helped him sit up. She brought the cloth to his forehead and wiped away the sweat for a moment. They said nothing. No words were needed. He had saved her children. He had nearly died doing it, and she had not left his side since. Outside, the village had changed. People were rebuilding. The fear had faded from their eyes. They looked stronger now. Like the fire he carried had passed into them. The children played without watching the trees. The elders walked with pride again. The air felt lighter. He walked out of the house on shaky legs. The villagers greeted him with bows and food. They gave him a coat stitched from monster hide. It was rough but strong, and it fit his shoulders well. He thanked them with a firm nod and a quiet smile. Then he looked to the forest. New problem was rising. One of the scouts had seen movement far beyond the trees. Not monsters this time, ships military grade. Alien soldiers wearing the colors of the council. They were heading this way, and they were not coming to help. The mother overheard the news and grew pale. She'd escaped the council long ago. She feared them more than the monsters. They took what they wanted, burned what they couldn't, and always hunted those who resisted. She grabbed the human's hand tightly. He listened to her story in silence. She told him how they had taken her people, how they destroyed her old home, how she ran through jungles and deserts with the twins, looking for a safe place. She told him how the council had branded her as a traitor for escaping. She expected fear in his eyes, but saw only calm. He began preparing again. He sharpened his swords. He cleaned his gear. He helped the villagers dig deeper shelters. He taught them to build signal traps and blind spots. They asked why he would stay. He said nothing, but the way he looked at the twins answered for him. The next morning, smoke trailed on the horizon. Council dropships pierced the sky, glowing blue beneath their metal wings. They hovered for a moment, then released troops like falling rain, armor, rifles, scanners. The villagers froze, but the human stood at the edge of the camp, weapons in hand, waiting. He didn't charge, he let them come close. Then he moved fast, low, brutal. He struck with a blade in each hand. The soldiers shouted, fired beams of light, but he rolled under them and sliced through armor. He bled, but kept going. Every scream from the twins gave him strength. The mother helped lead the villagers away from the fight. She carried both children in her arms, guiding the rest through secret paths. The trees shook from the battle behind them. Fires rose. Metal clashed against bone. She looked back once, tears filling her eyes. He was still standing. When she reached a safe hill, she turned again. The council ship burned in the sky. One engine failed. Then the next. It dropped hard into the trees with a violent crash. Silence followed. Then cheers. The villagers who stayed to fight joined her. They had won again. She found him near the wreckage, wounded, breathing hard but alive. His coat was torn. His swords were stained, but in his eyes there was still fire. He looked at her, then at the children, and gave the smallest nod. They had survived, but something told her the war wasn't over yet. The flame still burned in the forest. When the human sat alone beside the wreckage, he had wrapped his wounds with cloth and torn parts from enemy uniforms. His swords were dull, chipped from constant strikes, but he still carried them. The wind carried the scent of ash and scorched metal. The battle was over, but his mind stayed alert. Behind him, the village was quiet. The people worked silently to rebuild what the fire had not taken. Children gathered stones to clear paths. Mothers patched broken walls. Fathers stood on watch with tools turned into weapons. No one complained. They had seen death, and now they chose life. The twins came running to him with small hands full of berries. They giggled as they offered the fruit, unaware of how close death had been. He smiled and took them gently, eating with care to not scare them. The bruises on his face faded slowly, but the warmth in his heart grew stronger each time they laughed. The mother stood nearby, watching him. Her eyes held sorrow, gratitude, and something deeper. She had seen many warriors in her life, but never one who fought like him, not for power, not for honor, but for two children who weren't his, and a people he did not know. Later that night, she approached him with a soft blanket in her arms. She knelt beside him, offered the blanket, and spoke quietly. She told him it was made by her own hands, stitched from the fur of the beasts he had slain to her people. This was not just cloth. It was a symbol of honor and gratitude. He accepted it without words. He wrapped it around his shoulders, feeling its warmth, not just from the fabric, but from the meaning woven into every thread. The twins curled beside him as he leaned against a tree. For the first time in days, he closed his eyes without fear. In the morning, the village elder called a meeting. The people gathered near the fire pit. Forming a circle, the human stood beside the mother and her twins. The elder raised a carved staff and spoke of ancient laws. He spoke of the warrior who had killed not just beasts but fear itself. By tradition, such a warrior was given the highest gift, not treasure, not land, but place, a seat among them, a voice in their future, a family, if he would take it, and the choice to stay or leave as one of their own. The mother stepped forward and offered him a hand. Her fingers trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of hope. She had nothing to give but herself, and still, she gave everything. He looked at her, at the children beside her, and then at the people waiting in silence. He took her hand. That night, a feast was held under the stars. Fires lit the village as drums echoed into the sky. Food was shared, stories were told, and laughter returned. The human sat beside the mother with one twin asleep in his lap. The other tugged gently at his worn coat and smiled. In the shadows beyond the firelight, he noticed movement. 2 young boys were mimicking his fighting style. With sticks, they swung wildly, laughed, and shouted his name like a song. The elder watched and nodded with pride. The warrior had given them more than safety. He had given them courage. The mother leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. She whispered that she no longer feared the future with him. The village could survive. The children could grow, and maybe she could dream again. He looked at her, then to the stars. They were no longer distant and cold. They felt closer, warmer, like home. But deep inside, something still warned him. The monsters had been many, but the council would be more, and they would not stop after one loss. Still, for now the night was quiet. The fire crackled, and he held the children close. The morning sun stretched across the quiet village as life slowly returned to normal. Smoke no longer rose in the distance. The fields were not silent anymore. The children played. The adults worked, and the people spoke with laughter again. Yet, under this peace, the human prepared for what he feared would come next. He stood near the edge of the forest, sharpening his blade. The twins ran in circles behind him, playing with sticks, pretending to fight like their hero. Their mother watched from a distance, her heart filled with both pride and worry. She knew he wasn't resting because he believed the fight was over. He was resting because he knew it would begin again. At dusk, a scout returned with news. A large ship had landed near the far ridge. The symbol carved into the hull was unmistakable. It was the mark of the council's elite enforcers. They had come to punish the village for surviving, to erase the shame of defeat, and to remove the man who had made a mockery of their monsters. The villagers gathered once again in fear, but this time, they did not hide. They did not cry. They stood with weapons in their hands and fire in their eyes. The human walked into the center and raised his voice. He told them to listen carefully. This was not the time to fear. This was the time to show the council that humans were not prey. He took a deep breath and turned to the mother. He asked her to lead the people to the safe valley he had mapped earlier. She nodded slowly and kissed his cheek before gathering the children. Even the smallest one did not protest. They trusted him, and he would not fail them. He stood alone as the ship's engines roared over the trees. The soldiers marched down in perfect formation, their armor shining under the blood-red light. Their leader stepped forward and pointed at him. He was given one command: surrender and die quietly. But the human laughed and stepped forward with his blade. The battle was brutal. The human moved like a storm, cutting through metal and fire. He used every trick he had learned, every scar he had earned. The forest burned around them, but he did not fall, even when they shot him, even when they broke his bones. He stood. When the last soldier dropped, silence took over. The clearing was littered with broken machines and shattered helmets. The human limped to the ship and set it ablaze. The fire rose into the sky like a signal, a message to every world watching. The council had sent death, but they had only made him stronger. The villagers returned the next day. They found him barely alive but smiling. The twins ran to him, crying and hugging his bloodied arms. The mother dropped to her knees and pressed her forehead to his chest. He whispered something into her ear and she smiled through her tears. Weeks passed, and the village changed. The human was given a new home near the heart of the village. The people carved his story into stone, a tale told to every new child born. The twins stayed by his side, now training under him, and their mother never left his arm. One day, The council sent another message. It offered peace in silence. It was not a message of power. It was one of fear. They had seen the fire he carried. They knew now what one human could do when he fought not for empire, but for love. He read the message and tossed it into the fire. He chose the village. He chose the family. He chose peace, earned through blood and scars. And finally, after so long, he rested. Asterisk.